Part of the Culturas que Perduran, Enduring Cultures series from the Latina Heritage Month, the CIMAS and the Center for Latin American, Caribbean, and Latino Study wants to welcome you to one of our events. What we tried to do this year with the Latino Heritage Month was to have events that represent different groups, different countries, different cultures of the same Latin American cultures. So this time we have a presentation by Rene Gonzalez, who happens to be an Umass alum from political science, who's going to talk to us on Cuban IFA, Yoruba Religion in Cuba and its diaspora. Ruben is a Babalao, Awu Ifa, Bemi, Oni Shango, Omo Anya. Please welcome.
Thank you very much. As she said, I am an alumni from the university. I studied my bachelor's degree here at Umass in legal studies, and I did my master's here as well in political science. I was doing the doctorate, but other events made me, let's say, travel the world and explore other stuff. If you would have met me at that time, in 1997, I was just joking with one of the youngsters because I said, I studied here in 1997, and they said, oh, I was born there. Not the year I was born, so it made me feel so old, but that's okay. That's fine. Yeah, I'm young enough. So, if you would have asked me at that time, first and foremost, if I was a religious believing person, I would have probably laughed. I wasn't completely atheist, but I was a person who questioned me. I read a lot. I had read the Quran, I had read the Bible, I had read Buddhist texts, I had read, Zoroastrian texts. You name it, I probably had studied it and had at least a rough idea of what the faith were all about. Funny enough, the faith that I've actually come to adopt as my own, I had not really studied. I knew it existed somewhat because of the musical aspect. I actually came into the faith because I was interested in the drum set. And slowly but surely, when I met the person who started teaching me how to play bata, he was one of the old school, old guard, which is very, what's the word? Firm and dogmatic about the only people learning the rhythms of the secret rhythms of the bata being people who are initiated themselves. And to this day, he is still that way. He doesn't really teach anybody unless, of course, they are on one hand. And he knew me as a percussionist. He actually respected me greatly as a percussionist, as a musician. I played with him many times, did a lot of Latin jazz and salsa. But he would keep pushing me away. I would keep saying, Rene, you're a secular drummer, you're a great drum set player, because I'm a drummer. You're a good conguero, you're a good timbalero, but this is something else. This is more religious. I don't see this as your life path. And unfortunately, he was wrong about it. But I didn't know about it either. I was just really interested in learning how to play these drums. But it took 3 years. I convinced him, and through my association with him, I got really interested not only in the percussive, musical aspects of the religion, but I got really interested in the theological and cultural aspects of the religion as well. Particularly, and what happens to many people in the religion, I received the divination from the Father, and I was very impressed with the knowledge that the Baba Lao, which means basically Baba, Father, Lao of the secrets of the mysteries, the knowledge that this person who actually had no idea who I was, knew about what was going at that moment, told me this is what might happen in the next 28 days, make sure you do this, make sure you do that. And everything kind of came true in a positive way because I performed that goal. We'll get back to that in a few moments. But that piqued my interest as an intellectual person. And it had been a long time since I had pursued intellectual pursuits. I had lost a little bit of my interest in studying because of incidents that I had in life. I was just lost that interest, that curiosity. And my study with Avifa kind of brought it back to me. So, I'm very, what's the word? I find it very important to educate on this religion, particularly. That's why I titled it this. Because the faith, which I like to always refer to as Ifa, I will get back to why I'm almost a cringe when I hear something. I don't like the term, and there's reasons for it. We'll get to it. But I titled the explanation "The Misunderstood Faith" because sadly, within our present American context here, within our context in Puerto Rico and Panama and many other countries where it's practiced, most of those countries are majority either Protestant Christian or Catholic Christian. And from that vantage point, the faith is looked upon as either, on the best of terms, a backwards witchcrafty, tribal tradition, basically a leftover culture or of a lesser evil, let's put it that way. And that's the best way to look at it, if you could believe it. The more negative connotation is, this is of the devil. This is negative. This is filled with, this is opposite of what Christianity is supposed to be. So that's why I like to call it the misunderstood faith. Because it would be the opposite of that, and we'll get to that in a moment. So, what are the other names for the faith? La regla Lukumi, and they have to, as far as I got my research study, the Lukumi has many explanations that many people come up to it, but one of them that has become kind of standard is Lukumi was one way of saying my friend to another person. So it became kind of an association between the different slaves that arrived in Cuba. It was another way of identifying somebody else who essentially went through the same struggle or went through the same situation. So if somebody said, yo soy Lukumi, it was another way of self-identify. We are part of this group of people who have come from Nigeria as slaves to Cuba and have mixed with other cultures. So it wasn't only the Nigerian people, the Benin, people from the Carabali, the Congo, which have their own particular religion that's a sister faith. So that's one term. Another one that's very common is la regla de ocho. Regla just means the rule of, or the worship of, or the cult of. Some kind of, what's the word? Ritualistic religion. Let's put it that way. Some kind of cult, but not in the sense of cult as it's something crazy as we know it in movies here. Cult in the sense of religious worship or religious practice, where the focus is the Orishas, or Orisha worship. I personally, as a Babalao, like to just call it Ifa. I'm a firm believer that that's my personal opinion. I put it on other people. It's my belief that Ifa, whether it's the one practiced in Nigeria or the one practiced in Cuba, at the end of the day, it's the same thing. It's the practice of worshiping the Orishas, the practice of rendering worship to Olodumare, to God. We like to understand. And there's slight differences in mythologies. There's slight differences within all the lineages inside of Nigeria. So in my conception, the lineage that fell in Cuba or the lineage that falls in Brazil with Candomblé are just different lineages of the same practices. There's different mixtures. There's reasons why there are the differences because of the mixtures, the particular mixture that was found in Cuba. But for me, it's Ifa. To differentiate it, when people say, no, but I'm Ifa criollo, and there's a lot of arrogance. Even in our own faith practice. No. We don't believe in Ifa allá tradicional. We're not traditional Ifa. We're Ifa criollo. There's a very, what do you call it, very machista sometimes. A very arrogant self-association. No, this is ours, and there's a difference here. There's that human desire, sadly, to sometimes divide in some way. So sometimes people say, well, Afro-Cuban Ifa, to make a distinction between the Ifa practices in lineages in Ojo, in Ijebu, in Ileife, Togo, and different places, and the one that's practiced in Cuba. And then, of course, some of the more modern, maybe in the diaspora, people who are studying the faith from a more intellectual point of view as well, like to just call it the Orisha tradition. This is becoming a lot more popular these days, to say we're part of the general Orisha tradition. And if you see some of the more modern books that are being studied in the West, in the University of Pennsylvania, in Europe, etc., there's a lot of collections of essays that are being titled under this subhead. They're trying to put together. Basically, we're all part of the same thing. There's just subsets and differences. In the same way that there's differences in Christianity or differences in Islam, with Sufism, with Sunni Islam, with Shia Islam, etc. Okay, so that's a picture of this tablero that you see right here, filled with iyerosi, which is the sacred powder that Babalaos use to imprint the markings of the faith. Most of the faith practices for Babalaos are what's the word? Revolve around a binary system of 256 different signs, and each particular sign has a different set of, probably almost inexhaustible set of stories, according to some theological experts, over 3,000, 4,000 stories. No human being has memorized 3,000 stories per person. It's impossible. One of the best Babalaos in the world, at least in terms of his memory, is Baba Solakba de Popola from the Nigerian religion. Baba Solakba de Popola, I've been told, knows at least 30 Eshefa, 30 poems of Ifa per sign, so multiply 256 times 30. He's an eminence in his knowledge. He really has an incredible memory. For the Cuban Babalaos, it's good day if you remember 3 or 4 stories per sign. And sometimes you'll tell me a sign and I will not be, I'll have to refer to my reference text because Sometimes my memory fails me. But whenever a Babalao does any type of cleansing or any type of divination or any type of book, we'll get to that in a second, they have to imprint particular signs into this hierosum. So the hierosum is just a basic powder, but in our belief, it transforms and receives some kind of a magical property, which then the powder can be used for a whole bunch of different purposes. Put on the head. In some cases, more in the Nigerian religion, incisions are made in the head, so the powder is put directly into the body. So the head date, it could be drunk, so that energy is within you. It can be made, put into objects, to consecrate items. So the possibilities are pretty much endless for a whole bunch of different cleansings, in particular obras, spells that can be done. Okay, why is it called Santeria? So basically, out of necessity. Slaves had to cover up their worship under the guise of worshiping Catholic saint statues. So the original slaves couldn't just go out there and just walk around with the seats or the stones or the other objects of religion, because they'd either get whipped, they'd either get killed, etc. So they had to cover it up with statues. And when the masters, when they would rarely go into the areas where the slaves would reside, because that's the other reality, they would have their area over there, and the masters would live in the house. Just like here in the United States and the other places. When they would come and see some of the events and what they were doing, all they would see is the slaves would be worshiping at the foot of Santa Barbara, or at the foot, of El Niño de Antorcha, etc. So they would say to themselves, what a strange species of saint-like worship, or saint worship. For them it was weird, but at the end of the day, as long as it was Christian, or they thought it was in some way associated with they're worshiping Jesus in some way, it was okay. Little did they know that behind all that, they would have a statue placed here, but behind the altar or behind those coverings and the cloths, the orishas was made already. Now it's a little more public, it's a little more available. Things have changed with the Cuban Revolution. Originally, the Cuban Revolution was not necessarily very pro-religion. It's actually a very atheist Marxist state. But the practice now, it's very open. You can walk in Havana and you see everybody wearing regatas. Sadly, very fashion-like. Right. Sometimes it's lost a little bit of its seriousness, as it had before. Okay, the other reality is, those statues are sometimes employed by some believers, depending on the traditions of each house. I don't. I don't, because I don't believe that there has to be, or a necessity to associate in any way the religion with Catholic elements anymore. The real icons of the faith are usually elements of nature: stones, shells, seeds, and other sacred items. The Catholic statues have absolutely no astral or sacred power. I can't do anything for somebody that comes to my home and perform a divination and perform a call for them and say, go ahead and pray to the statue and touch it, rub it, and it'll help. It doesn't work like that. So for some people do have it. Some people, friends of mine in Puerto Rico and in Cuba, you go to the home and I have a huge statue of blah blah blah, etc. And I respect it, but there's different. Usually there's a division. Usually the ones that are older and they remember the traditions from the 60s, 70s, and 80s will have a lot of these statues. Some of the younger Babalao who are having that globalized communication with Nigeria and with different places are already understanding the intellectual and theological underpinnings of the religion. So we do not see the need anymore to put the Catholic statue. The only statue I have in my house, funny enough, is one of San Francisco of Assisi, which is the actual Orula syncretization. And I didn't buy it. When I bought my home in Springfield, Massachusetts, there was a statue of the Virgin Mary when I arrived. And I grabbed the statue. My grandmother's very Catholic. It was my first home. I wanted to make her really happy when she would come to my house and see the first home for her grandchild. And oh, look, the Catholic, the Virgin Mary's there to make her happy. That was the intent. But while I'm cutting the grass on the corner of the property, I find under the foliage a statue about this size of San Francisco of Assisi. So I didn't know who the heck it was. I wasn't in the religion first. I cleaned it up, left it out there next to the Virgin Mary. When 3 or 4 years passed, I come back from Cuba. Before I leave, I asked, what's the secret statue that goes with the rubla? Oh, San Francisco. So what's it look like? It's like a San Francisco monk. He's got like little pigeons on top of him. And that's when I made the connection that Orumila had already picked me to be a Babalao before I even had entered the faith. Because of all the homes in all the parts of the world, the home I bought in Springfield had the statue thrown right there. So obviously I came home, cleaned it up, and put it inside. It's the only one that I have near my altar. because of that particular relationship. But beyond that, I don't have any other ones. Okay. So what cultures contributed to the faith? Most of the faith practice and customs come from the Yoruba. Most of them can be traced heavily to Oyo and to the Ijebu regions of Nigeria, though there are remnants of all the lineages in Cuba. Cuba's traditions, Ifa tradition, has a unique mixture of all of these religions, which is why many of its practices sometimes seem a little foreign to one or another lineage in Nigeria. It is the only lineage that has a mix of all. Because most of them, if you're from Ijebu, you practice the Ijebu lineage and that's it. You do not take elements from Choco, you do not take elements from Indian faith. That's the other thing. Usually, if you were from a particular region in Nigeria, you will worship or you are initiated to the Orisha of that region. So in Oyo, it would be Shango. I believe in Ile-Ife, Batalao, or Odudua are very important. If you're from Osun State, Osun, etc. So if you were near from the rivers, the Oba River, the Jewa River, etc., you would not really have a lot of choice. In Cuba, mostly to protect the lost tradition of initiating these people, a lot of these orishas were essentially mixed together. So if you're initiated, I'm an initiate of Shango. That's my particular orisha. So if I receive Shango, I would receive a whole bunch of other orishas. I would receive Agayu, I would receive Ibeji, Oya, Oshun, Yamaya, a whole bunch of different orishas that are in some way associated with Shango. And the idea behind it is that the more people that had these orishas, the more likely that the tradition would be able to be spread. Because now that I have them, if I wanted to initiate somebody in Yamaya or initiate, I can't do it now because of my faith tradition's limitations about I can't crown anymore. But if I was a Santero, if I was an Orisha, I could now give it to somebody else, and that person could, in the future, initiate another person. So it was an issue of protecting the religion. But in Nigeria, since that was not necessarily at that time a consideration, that people would just initiate with the Orisha of their region. You're a child of Odudu, that's it, that's your destiny. If you had a destiny to become a Babala, then you would be an initiate of Odudu or Eshu, etc., and you're also a consecrated priest of Ifa. Okay, this is important, and actually this I found out pretty recently with some of my discussions with other elders in Cuba and outside of it. One of the main problems, at least in the practice here in the diaspora, is a lot of interlineage battles, which are, in my opinion, ridiculous and silly. And if we study and do the historical research, we can come to understand the why in Cuba these things happen. One of the points of contention is that in many of the more common Nigerian lineages that have made their way now to the diaspora, there's not so many Eshu icons. Eshu is one of the more important deities, so they might have 8 or 9 different particular type of Eshus. Eshu Ajay for money, Eshu Awure for good luck, Eshu Odara, Eshu Elbo, which is the one that receives Elbo, Eshu Ishegum, which is the Eshu of overcoming enemies or having that type of good luck in your life. And that's it. They're very simply made. It might be just literally a Yangi stone, which is a particular is what they call pyrite, just like a red stone. So just a stone and some basic consecrations, and that's it. The Cuban Eshu are different. They tend to be very cement-based. They'll be very artistically done. They'll have power shells for faces. They'll have very intricate secrets inside of them. There'll be at least 256 different ones, one per altar. And many of some of the newer practitioners here in the diaspora, which have their particular trainers or teachers or initiators in Nigeria, will look at the Cuban side and say, you guys are invented. We don't have this in Nigeria. If it doesn't exist in Nigeria, how did it get into Cuba? And if it didn't exist in Nigeria, it's a total invention. The answers are in Benin. In Benin, they have a tradition of creating what they call legba. That also influences the traditions in Voodoo. If anybody's a Voodoo practitioner or has read and studied Voodoo practitioner, Papa Legba is Eshu. In Brazil, they have Eshu with EXU, Eshu Elegba, Elegbara, Elegua, whichever way you want to say it. These are all the names for the same deity, Eshu, which is a particular trickster god, but at the same time, a neutral arbiter between all the other deities. If you get on his good side, you get afflicted by the good deities. If you get on his bad side, he'll let all the bad stuff happen. He's very neutral. He's basically the idea of the crossroads. The idea that you made a pact with the devil at the crossroads comes from this idea of Eshu living there, the one that basically stands in the middle of everything. and decide, well, if you did it bold, I'm going to let you go to the good side. If you didn't, you go down that road. And he dominates all these crossroads, and all it's either good fortune to you or negative fortune. Well, in Benin, they have a different issue per sign. So they have to offer 256 different issues, and they have different cargas, they have different ingredients in them. And the issue, the legbas from Benin are actually made of a stone-like substance, arcilla. So there is the roots of the Cuban style issue. The people from Yoruba land, or people who study only Yoruba land traditions, may be confused with Cuban practice and say, well, you guys are mythic, no? Because we had slaves that came from Benin, the Arara. And the people who came from the Arara in some way or other had to mix their elements with Cuban Ifa. So now we have a new mixture. We have a mixture from Yoruba land. The other thing I discovered is the tradition, the initiation that we call Mano de Orula, where we receive the sacred items of Orumila. In Yoruba land, they call it Ishefa. And it might be similar in some ways, but not necessarily with our ceremonies. In Benin, they literally, if you translate whatever they call it in their language, in Arara, it actually translates to hand of Orumila, the same we call it. We call it Mano de Orula, and lasts the same days, 3 days, just like ours. So again, there's evidence that there's rituals in Benin that came to Cuba, and you can see them in the Cuban practice that are not necessarily in the Yoruba land practice. And that usually, for the most part, I'd say 95% of the conflicts that blow up on Facebook or on groups when we're discussing these type of theological subjects explode on this lack of knowledge between Yoruba land and Benin. When people are discussing the topic, if they would only simply study and find out and see the pictures of people with elegbas from Benin, they would realize that it's completely authentic practice as well, both in Yoruba, Benin, and in Cuba. I put the Congo there, though I'd like to make a particular distinction. Though the Congo practice are seen more in a sister African faith called Palo, or Palo-Mombe, or Palo-Mayombe, elements of its theology have intermixed with Afro-Cuban Ifa. And most of it is seen, unfortunately, most secrets for the Babalaos, but the Congo is different. It's a different practice. It has a different liturgical language. It has a different initiation. The focus of Palo Mayombe in particular is focused on the idea of consecrating a spirit energy where they have a ganga. So it's different. It doesn't have anything to do with Yoruba land Ifa, and it definitely doesn't have anything to do with Afro-Cuban Ifa. However, elements of las cargas, the fundamento, the aspect of the gangas have made themselves into the fundamentos of Osai and Orum. So anybody who's a Babala who has Orum or has Osai in these particular days, you can see very clear similarities between Orum and Osai, at least the way they're doing them now in Cuba, with the way they do the gangas for the Congo. And the only explanation to that is, well, there must have been some Congo slaves who, at the same time, you can be initiated in both religions. There's a lot of people who are paleros, or Abacua, which is a totally different secret society as well, from the Carabali, who are paleros, or Abacua, who are santeros, and who are babalaos. But they've done all four initiations, and might be a spiritist too, or I might have been a spiritist before. So you can see elements of this intermixing in all three faiths. But I like to make the distinction because in many ways, some of the houses, which I consider are sadly not too educated, insist that their initiates rayarse en palo, or insist that they have to initiate in Congo Palo before they can start doing their Yoruba initiations in Ifa. And that's not necessary. If you do not have a destiny to have anything associated with Palo, you do not have to do that. And in fact, in some cases, there's signs of Ifa that tell the initiate it is prejudicial to you, it's affecting you, it's negative to you to have Palo objects. Ogundakana comes to mind. Ogundakana is a sign that tells the person you are too focused on using the ganga for negative purposes. You are going far away from the influence of Ifa, and Orumila is not happy. Orumila has left the home, and you have to perform this ebo to bring him back. So there are signs where Orumila warns you you're too much associated with it. Obewori is another one. Obewori is the battle between the Mayomberos and Orumila. So there's many signs that explain that. Finally, European Spiritism. European Spiritism comes from the Allan Kardec tradition from Europe. So anybody who knows mediumship and seances and stuff like that, that type of Spiritism has taken hold in Puerto Rico. Very powerful in Puerto Rico. In Cuba, it got mixed basically with practice of Ifa because It wasn't until 1940s or 1950s where the first objects, the first true objects and traditions and prayers and liturgies for Egungun, which is the practice of worship of the ancestors here, started arriving to Cuba and Ifa to be practiced. So therefore, because of the absence of a ritual or some kind of ritualistic practice, mythology, to be able to practice some kind of worship to the spirits, it was supplanted in some way with the practice of adding this European tradition of having the cups of Oda Espiritual, of having pictures of your people that passed away, of rendering essentially very Catholic, Christian prayers to the ancestors, because there was nothing else. We didn't have the Ekun tradition of having the costumes of the ancestors, etc. It wasn't basically until the 1940s and 50s where the religion's practices become to be formalized. The diversity that existed there until the 1950s essentially kind of gets eliminated, and we're all running one particular line, mostly because of the efforts of matriarchs. People will be surprised. It was the efforts of mostly three women, Feminita Gomez, Maria Toa, and Mama Monserrate. These women were ruthless. If you didn't follow their line, you would not get initiated in religion. And whoever dared to try to initiate you, they would get the biggest witchcraft they could imagine. People knew the story. Their life would get all sick. Nobody wanted them. There would be matrimonial fights in their house. Somebody would die in there. Nobody wanted to mess with these women. These women said, that one over there, he disrespects me. He doesn't get initiated in this town. That's how it was. So their influence, the influences of their husbands, Padre Gaitán, Olun Dapón, Miguel Fede Padrón, Fernando Roja, all these blah, essentially standardized religion. Whatever they said, went. And then, of course, their godchildren did that. And, of course, their godchildren did that. And now, with the advent of documentation, of writing down a lot of what was an oral tradition, it becomes fun. Now people don't invent things. It's, well, if we have a question on what we should do, let's go to the catalogs. And know what was there, what did Tata Gaitán do, what did Miguel Fede do, what did Fernando Roja do, etc. Now there is actually, after 1940s, 1950s, two ways that Egungun can be practiced. Actually, three ways. One is the Olorisha, the Santero way, which is basically to draw on a corner of any area with a shock, a particular area, so that sacrificial ingredients can be placed there, and an altar of sorts can be done, and there's songs that can be sung. The Ifa way is to do it with the teja de Egun. The teja is basically a ceramic tile, like one of the tiles that we see in Miami on top of the roofs of houses, because it's made out of ceramic, and ceramic is the earth, and the earth is where the dead live. So it's a representation of the dead, the man. We do it in ceramic tile, so we don't have to do all our offerings to the ground. Initially, before they would do it, they would literally create a hole in the ground and mark certain Ifa sign that have to do with the Egun and sacrifice there, whatever animal sacrifices they have to do, or whatever offerings they have to place. To make it a little bit easier, they created the tradition of the teja de Egun, which is actually born in the sign Obe Owani, Obe One. And then the last tradition is more Babalao based or more meal based. The tradition, it's not necessarily Egungun, but it's very related, called Orulewek or Orum. And Orum is the deity that both in Nigeria and here in Cuba, it is only received by men. So I have Orum. Most Babalaos do. I would not recommend for people to have Orum unless they're Babalaos, because Orum and Osain are particular deities, are pretty powerful deities, and unless, if for whatever reason they're not positively working for you, if it turns negative, you need the intervention of a Babalao to essentially stabilize the energy somewhere. So I don't recommend just giving Orum to all the males unless they're, of course, Babalao to handle, unless they can literally do the rituals that I do on the Ifa trade to be able to cleanse myself and keep myself in. And it means in good fortune. So this is just a drawing, a depiction of what Orombira would somehow look, at least from the African tradition. The Irokera that you see over here, with this Irofa, in his hand, which is a Nigerian style one. The Okwele, which is our divination chains. The Hikara, the Topera, and the Tablero. It's a depiction of him. So there's different important artifacts for Allah. Okay, so what are the priesthoods and the religion? An aleyo is either a non-believer or a believer who has not been initiated as a full priest. This includes recipients of what's called eleques. This is a ceremony for santeros, where it's a very basic ceremony. They receive the first five necklaces identifying them as a member of the house, so that somebody can say, but it's santero, or you're a member of this faith. For example, when you came in, and I know as you were coming in, I noticed you're a dead. So people notice the dead, okay, so they're in the faith practice because of what there's things that they're wearing. I'm wearing the Babalao one, which is thick green and yellow one. But most initiates will have a thin line of green and yellow. Which, this is for Orumina. The Babalaos are the only ones that get the green and yellow. We're the only ones empowered to work with a deity of wisdom or divination. Okay. So everybody who's received the legates, everybody's received what's called the warriors, the four first Orisha, Eshu, Ogun, Ochosi, and Oshun. And the reason that they received those is Eshu is so important in this faith. Even my Baba Chango will have to forgive me. Eshu is extremely important. Nothing happens without Eshu essentially being removed from the equation, or removing him from the obstacle. All the other Orishas tried to overcome, to outsmart, to outbeat Eshu, and they couldn't. If you can imagine what Eshu is in cartoonish imagery, think of the Tasmanian devil. He's quick. You cannot get him. You cannot destroy him. Whatever, he has the powers to transmute anything into whatever he wants. Make his finger into a sword. I mean, so imagine that type of a powerful being that can do whatever he wants at any moment. You know, you're thinking you're about to beat him, and he just makes a hole right there, right before you're about to get him, and you fall into the hole. That's his powers. And he likes to essentially put obstacles to people and laugh at them. You know, and the only way to get out of his bad side is essentially, and the only one who figured that out, incidentally, Orumila, was to not defeat him fighting. You can't defeat him fighting. You have to defeat him. Yeah. Because Eshu cannot create anything. His powers are destructive in nature or neutral in nature. He can put obstacles. He cannot create something. So there's a saying in Nigerian Divine verse that says something to this effect. I don't have any farms. I don't have any animals. I cannot feed myself. Whomever feeds me is my friend. Whomever doesn't feed me is my friend. So Orumila figured out, no, he did what he did always. He consulted Ifa on how to control Eshu and Eshu. Ifa said, give him a male goat, you'll be all right. Which is his favorite food. And he sacrificed the male goat to Eshu and said, I will be your servant. Whatever you need, I will do for you. So that's the relationship between Orumila and Eshu. It's extremely important. Almost all at both, in somewhere or another, and at Eshu's throne. And then he takes it to whoever else has it. So we give Eshu as the first Orisha because if the person is stagnating, if they're having problems in matrimony, say if they can't get a job, if they just not going anywhere in life, the first thing you got to do is have Eshu on your side. Everything else will flow after that. We can start appreciating all the other Orishas in turn. But nothing's going to get done without Eshu getting his part. And in almost any sacrifice, no matter what else anybody gets, we got to give a rooster to Eshu. We got to get him out of the way, because otherwise he'll obstacle the situation. Okay. The Orisha and Santero. This is a term, you know, when people say they're Santero, a Babala would be someone like me, initiated into Ifa. A Santero is they use the term lower rank. Let's put it this way. If this was the Catholic Church, Santeros would be like a padre, un sacerdote, a Catholic priest, a regular. The archbishops or the bishops would be the Babalas in some way. Or think of whatever a person in the Catholic Church that would be especially, I'm trying to think of a difference between, maybe the difference between an imam or an ayatollah. You know, the idea behind that the ayatollah is supposed to have this repository of Muslim knowledge. An imam too, to a certain extent, but whenever there's a question, for example in Iraq, in Najaf, they have to go to Ali Sistani and ask him, what do you want to do? And what he says is the word. If he says, go out there and do something, then the lower priest will do something. So the Babalas essentially are entrusted with being the repositories of the theological knowledge. If there's a question of what should be done in a particular ritual, a properly trained Babala should be able to answer, well, technically in this ritual we do this, we do that, we do that. Of course, if it's a young Babala, he might not know. And the proper ethical answer is to say, I don't know, let me ask my elder. Or I cede the decision to my elder. Something that I don't know. Santeros and Orishas have mostly the function of reproducing the faith. They're extremely important. Without a Santero and Orisha, you cannot reproduce in the faith. We do not have any more priests. Babalaos, at least in our tradition, in the Nigerian religions, they can initiate, but in the tradition of in Cuba, there's a reason for that. I'll explain in a second. They just deal with Ifa-related stuff, or initiating new Babalaos, or initiating new people in the Mano, etc., or giving warriors, divination, and both. Santeros have pretty much two functions, even though they can do other ones, two primaries. Giving elected, and they are the ones that initiate a new Santero into the religion. So if we want the religion to spread, we got to have other priests who can initiate other people. So once it's time to initiate a new Orisha, you have to get 10 or 12, or actually you can tell me, what's the number usually? Is it 8 to 14?
Like, well, it depends what Orisha is going to become. That's what, for my initiation, I am Omo of Apatala. And there are 16 origins in the.
Okay. So it depends on violation. That's the other part. Even though I'm technically the higher ranking priest between the two, because she's an Olorisha and I'm a Babalao, it's also about how much experience you have in certain ceremonies. And first of all, she has 15 years in the faith. I have 4.5. That's the big difference there. There's more experience in time. 2, she's worked mostly Olorisha ceremonies. I mean, countless, probably over 20 and 30, right? 20 or 30 initiations? Around a little bit more than that. So she knows Olorisha consecrations down pat. When it comes to initiations of Manorula or post-extra, there's a specialization. It's like a doctor who's a specialist in gynecology, and then somebody who's a podiatrist or something like that. It's different people who specialize. But all those who work with certain ceremonies, we might know some basics about these other ceremonies, but sometimes details like, well, how many Olorishas do you actually need? You definitely need a lot. You need 8 to 16 or something. I know for Ifa work, minimum, I think you need 16 or at least 8. For a particular reason, you need 8 to 16 Babalaos in order to initiate another Babalao. Okay. So the Santero is a fully initiated priest in the faith. So they're actually called priests. Everybody before that, Alejo, is not priests. It's half initiated, a believer, a follower. These are priests. They have a consecration ceremony on their head. They have a guiding Orisha. In her case, it's a Batala. In my case, it's a Chango. They can perform most of the duties of the faith. They can throw Obi, which is a divination system that's very simple, just to get yes or no answers. Chango, do you think it's beneficial for me to take this trip to Puerto Rico? This business trip? Should I take it now? That type of questions. Anything that the person is worried about. Should I marry this person? Should I take this job? Etc. You can divine with Obi. Or they can use what's called the shells. Erin di Logun is the way the Nigerians call it. In Cuba it's called the Logun. It's basically 16 cowrie shells. Actually, it's 21. Maybe it's that it was hand, but 16 are the ones used in the actual divination. And they have a divination system that can be very effective, and they can prescribe a book based on the divination result to solve a problem. You have, the shells say here that you're having problems with your matrimony. Yes, that's true. We've been fighting so much. What can I do? There's particular boss for that, particular sacrifices for that. For whatever reason, we can improve your matrimony. Okay. They can do cleansings, they can do a book, and they can do the eleches and your Gosha ceremonies. Finally, and your Gosha is the consecration, the Orisha consecration. Finally, the Babalaos are the high priest. Babalaos receive a consecration ceremony with the icons of the faith that are considered supreme icons. And in this case, the name of it in Cuba is called Olofin. In Nigeria, it's called Igba, which is a representation of, if I'm correct, my theological knowledge fails me sometimes. If I'm correct, was the third wife of Oromila. Oromila divined, as he usually do with his obere, and he was told by Ifa that a visitor would be visiting him that would give him immeasurable power and riches. That he was to treat this particular visitor with all the kindness that he could, just completely give his house to her, do whatever this person wanted, that no matter what, this person was going to give him what he wanted. And so he did. When Odu arrived to his home, he had a feast prepared and everything, and she was so surprised to be welcomed into a home in a way that nobody had ever welcomed her into the house. And she decided to marry him, and through her powers, her particular powers, she mixes them together with Rumila. The idea behind it is that a Babalao who has Olofin is especially particularly powerful. And back in the day, 1930s, 1940s, each Ifa house would have one Olofin. There would be at least 30, 40, 50 Babalaos. Only one of them would have Olofin, the elder Babalao. And once he passed away, there was a ceremony called Cantification, where they would divine with Ifa to see who will be the next one who will receive that object. It would be passed down, from elders. Sadly, commercialism and money-making, marketing, now there's people who have only 5 years of Ifa and they have a Olofin. So it's a little bit on the sad side. But it was very closely guarded before, and only the top and the elder in 20, 30 years Ifa would have it. Now it's everybody has an Olofin, sadly. You can go in Miami, there's probably like 40 different Olofins all over the area. In Nigeria, however, it's common that after 7 to 10 years, everybody has Babalao who's trained and who's done his job to get Igba enrolled. Because the idea behind it is that no Babalao is really 100% complete unless he has Odu, unless he has seen Odu. That's another prohibition. We were talking about that before, about the issue of female resistance in the faith. At least in Nigeria and in Cuba too. Cuba even more strictly. The Odu irete telu irete open stipulates that nobody, Odu stipulated conditions. I'll live with you, but I have one condition. None of the females, none of the wives in your house can see me. None of them can enter my room. None of them can feed me. And none of them can receive me. If any of them break that, you're going to, you know, essentially turn into a pillar of salt, etc. And one of the wives, of course, was angry about that. You know, one of the first wives. I can't see her. And of course, they went in. She opened the door. She died, and Orumila was someone else and felt from whatever other distance something was wrong. Came back to this house, and Otto already had left his home. But she essentially told him, "I will always follow you through this particular rock to be by you all of you. But I'm angry that one of your wives violated one of my rules." In Nigeria, there's new changes are happening, so it's a contested, very controversial discussion, and I'm not going to get too much to it right now. Maybe at the end, when you ask questions. Yes, go ahead.
However, women usually did not used to get the hand of Orumila, but kofa. They are now giving the hand of Orumila, the full, to women.
You mean the Yanifas status? Yeah, it's a controversial aspect. I'll touch upon it a little bit
I'll
here.
be 26 next month.
With the Yanifas?
More about the law.
Oh, you mean initiate of Batala or
Yes,
our
initiate of
Yeah,
Batala.
lower priest.
A lower priest,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I thought you were.
I got 26 years.
26 years. So you're being here.
So I've done 140 initiations, so.
Good, excellent. So the Yanifas status is a little bit more controversial. I'll touch upon a little bit behind it. Women can be initiated Olorisha. There's no problem with that. And in fact, as I said, in Cuba, the ones that led the religion were females. It wasn't literally until, I think it was Mama Montserrat, I'm going to say it was Mama Montserrat, I could be wrong in my historical knowledge, it was Mama Montserrat who initiates Octavio Sama, which is Obadi Meji. And of course, Obadi Meji, after he gets all that knowledge from the matriarch, doesn't initiate females. Or he initiates females, but he doesn't teach them secrets. He has female godchildren, but only the men will learn how to direct the ceremonies. And especially one of his elder, most important young godchildren, Nicolás Angelica, who writes the very famous Manual de Loriate, etc. They continue to pass on that knowledge, again, only to the males. So unless there's a particular people study, they don't realize this was a religion that was protected, that it would have not existed in the Cuban diaspora if it weren't for those three or four females, Cuca, Dua, Maria Montserrat, Feminita Gomez, there's so many. So it was mostly the females. The males were mostly Babalaos when they came a little later, and a Babalao can't function alone. He has to have a relationship even on the Nigerian side. So they were kind of relegated to be, what's the word, utilitarian person. We need you for something, we'll call you. We need you for a matanza, we'll call you. We need you to do an above our other, we'll call you. But we lead the charge. We direct the ceremonies. It's actually the inverse of how it is in Nigeria, because if we go out to the Nigerian side, they have a very structured religious hierarchy. All the way from the Unidi Fe, the Awise, Gonda Bimbola, the Aragba, the different chiefs from the different towns, the Oloje, etc. They have a pyramid structure where every region will have, a council of 16 Babalaos, and that small village will have a council of 16 younger Babalaos. I mean, it comes down, and they can trace their lineage all the way up the top. And younger Babalaos can't, cross the line, because one of the elders they'll get called into a council and stripped of their powers, or not their powers, but stripped of their title to do anything. They're not going to be able to practice in their home, because if people find out, they're going to have 16 or 17 Babalaos show up in the house and say, what's going on? We told you can't practice. And that's happened. That happened to actually a very famous, at least in the Western, young Babala who passed away, but with a lot of good knowledge. Ajo Salami wrote a lot of great books about the theology on the Nigerian side. And Ajo Salami essentially got the leash, pulled on him from his elders, because he was essentially, to the West, he was presenting himself as a completely initiated Babalao that could, write these books, etc. And then probably there was a little bit of element of human jealousy. He was getting a lot of fame. He was getting a lot of clients, Western clients coming for divination, so he was getting a lot of money. And his elders came over and said, hey, you haven't finished your 7 years of tutelage with us. You're still Omo. You're still a trainee. So you can't practice with these Westerns. You can write the books, that's fine. But you didn't give us credit that we taught you these verses of the book. So he got called in. So that structure is a lot stronger than the Nigerian side. On the Cuban side, you can't tell any young Babalao, sadly, 5 or 6-year-old Babalao somewhere in Miami or New York, oh, don't do that, I do what the heck I want. You can't do nothing. Orumila will protect me. It's a lot of arrogance. That's a lot of lack of intellectualism in the faith too. And you can see this across all faiths. It's not only in Ifa, but we're not exempt from it. Okay, so Orumila basically, the people who are Babalaos, they're supposed to perform the ceremonies with Orumila, the deity of wisdom, and the Ibikeji Olodumare, which is the second in command to God. So Orumila is taught to be like, this is God being the second in command. He's the only Orisha that saw creation with God. Actually, he did it against his wishes. All the other orishas were told to cover the face, so they all covered their face, and the Rumila essentially did this. So he held his fingers and he started watching. But God, in his powerfulness, saw what he was doing and says, you like to watch? Now your destiny is to write the destiny, to your particular responsibility is to correct the destinies of everyone who lives. You are now condemned to have, every time they call upon you, you have to help them. And you have to perform them. And you have to you're the only one that can change their destiny. So now he had this extremely important responsibility because he violated the prohibition to not see creation. But because he saw it, he's the only one that can find out what's the person's destiny at a particular given point in time. Because he's seen the past all the way to the future, till the end of the universe, as the theology goes. Okay, so Babalaos may or may not have their own guardian Orisha consecrated. Some don't. And in fact, before Bernardo Rojas in 1940s, 50s, a lot of Babalaos would be initiated Babalaos, but they would not necessarily be initiated as a Sala Chango or something like that. The reason that came to be is because there was a lot of intra-Olorisha and Babalao conflicts, a lot of, I rule here, no, you rule here, a lot of battling. And some Orishas would not allow some Babalaos without their consecrated Orisha into this initiation, which was really a violation of their ranks. It was almost disrespectful to tell Babalao not to be able to enter the Orisha consecration, but there was houses that did that. So Fernando Rojas started telling his godchildren, well, okay, we'll fix that. All of my new godchildren, before you become Babalaos, initiate as Orisha, and then you can initiate Zifra, so that they would not be able to be pushed away from the consecration. If anybody asks, do you have Chango? Yeah, Chango, I did it in Mariana with so and so. Go call them, check it out. And then they wouldn't be able to stop them from entering the initiation rooms. So it was really a political decision. A lot of the rules that we have in the Cuban Ifa tradition, in many ways, were political divisions or accommodations. All right, we'll come to an agreement. We'll do this way, and Matanzas will do it this way, and we'll keep the peace. So Babalaos, their destiny in life is to serve Orumila. They can perform all the functions of the faith, everything that the Orisha can do, such as the consecrations of, and they can also do things that all the Orishas can't do. They can consecrate Ifa, they can consecrate Eshu, Osum, Olofim Ogdu, Orum, Osain, Olokun Ifa, Orisha Ifa. There's different Orishas that only Babalaos are the ones that particularly organize it. Babalaos, at least in the Cuban side, and on the Nigerian side, they can't divine with the Logun shells. They're because of the sign Obefun, where there was a separation. The Babalaos would use the chain, or Orishas would choose the shells. They can't perform Eleka ceremonies. They can't perform Yokosha ceremonies. Again, these were political decisions. In the Nigerian side, they see that as weird. Why not? You're a son of Chango. If they look at me and say, you're a son of Chango, why can't you do it? You have the power to do that. And technically, they're logistically and theologically right. But politically or traditionally, our tradition establishes once you move over to the land of Ifa, as a Babalao, you're not supposed to do it. So we follow that prohibition. That's more of a respect to the tradition. We allow Santeros and Orishas to do their ceremonies. When we're doing our thing, we do our thing. Okay. So as I said, they cannot consecrate Orishas from the Olorishas. Yemaya, Oshun, Changoa, Gayu, Babaluaye. There's certain Orishas that if they need to be received for whatever reason, the Orisha says, you need to receive Babaluaye, we need to talk to a set of Olorishas to consecrate for you. I can't do it for you. So we take people to get that done. They may, however, perform sacrifices or propitiation ceremonies to all the Orishas, since their high rank status allows them to work with any Orisha. And that's in the Osalbe. Osalbe establishes that nothing that a Santero does, or at least an initiation room, without the presence of the Acheo Rumila, the consecration of La Pintura, or Yucuncana, La Madanza, the Registro, and the Boa Entrada, all these things need to have the Acheo Rumila, which is that Illeroso Nashor at the beginning. You have to mark certain signs. That's the Acheo Tavala. Add it to it, okay. You can continue the ceremony, essentially, okay? But they're in charge. Once it's in a Yoko Osha, and I learned that really quick. I've never done, I'm usually extremely respectful in all meetings, but I learned that very quick entering and watching other people. That once you're in a Yoko Osha, give me a Coke, I'm out. Because we don't want to get in trouble. There's people who already are sensitive. They have a what do you call that? What do you call a stick on their shoulder about it? A chip on their shoulder about, hey, this is my ceremony. Babalao don't rule nothing. So I don't like to get in those battles about those. But I say, no, you're right. You're the only thing. You just said. I wish more Babalaos were more humble about that, because they get into a lot of battles for it. Okay, so the Omoanya, these are other smaller ranks. I'm also an Omonia. I'm an initiate Omonia. Omonia have to do a particular ceremony, not with this bata. This is a pericula. A pericula is basically a non-consecrated bata. So anybody can touch this and anybody can play it anywhere. I could go into a rock band and play it. I would definitely not, unless I want to be completely, have my reputation destroyed all over the United States and in Cuba, play a fundamento de Añá with Sting on the stage or something like that. No, you don't do that. Because Añá is there. There's a deity that lives within, that has to be consecrated by Babalaos within it. And then, of course, all of these individuals, this is, by the way, Victor Stern. This is the one, person probably mostly responsible for my entry in faith. Because he's the one that first taught me Mata. And through him, I met Alfredo Boyut de Vilo in New York, which initiated me in Añá. So these are elders. I mean, these guys are already 65, 70. You know, they still play very old stuff, which I prefer. Very clean. They know the liturgy perfect. No disrespect. As you can see, they're dressed impeccably. I do not see that very common. There's been a lot of degradation in the faith. That you sometimes come to some of these Añá and you see the guys dressed as if they're coming out of a reggaeton concert, and that's not my style. You know, I don't have to always look so perfect, but if you're gonna go to an Añá, this is how you're supposed to sit. You can even tell the boys the way they put their feet. There's a particular way that you have to sit, etc. So these are Omonia in practice. They are the priests and specialists of the Batatos. A lot of these ceremonies, initiations, etc., must have what's called a presentación añá, so that the new head that has been consecrated is known in heaven that there's a new santero that has been born. And in order to do that, they have to play a particular liturgy, a symphony of rhythms, which brings down the energy of the Irisha, and they hear it. They come down, and then the person's touched their head to all the three batas, essentially letting them know, I'm here. That's how they're essentially presented. It's a presentation, like royal, you know, the Duke of York, and that type of thing. Well, they have to do a ceremony and they have to present. The other rank, it's not really a rank because you could be a balao and santero and genosainista, but some people are named as such for their specialization in knowing a lot about herbs and plants and their liturgical and healing properties. So some people, beyond knowing the prayers of each plant, for example, which is for atiponla, which is a particular plant, atiponla. They'll be specialists in knowing the herbal remedies. Oh, what do you have? Oh, you have a stomach ache? This plant is good for this, and this plant is good for that. And they can identify them. I'm horrible plants. I still haven't gotten good at them. But she's great at them. She'll look at them and go, Anamum's around here. I remember she came out of my house and she smelled it. Here in Springfield, Massachusetts, there's Anamum. There's Anamum somewhere in the yard. And she went and found it. So there's people who are specialists in finding, you know, they know the plant's designs and they know what they can be used for. Not everybody's extremely good at it, but Osainista. The reason they're called Osainista is because Osain is the deity of Ewe, or the deity of plants, of green. He is the witchcraft par excellence, the ruler of everything that you see, all those trees out there, everything in the forest, that's Osain. He is the ruler of all that. So anything that has to do with witchcraft, it would be black magic or good magic, is Osain. And Osainistas are the experts in everything that has to do with green and herbs. That's the depiction of a Nigerian Babalawo. What their dress is a little bit different. I wanted to bring that difference because Cuban Babalaos, you're never going to see them anymore. I mean, I'm pretty much dressed as nice as possible as you can see a Cuban Babalawo. If you see Lázaro Cuesta or you see Victor Betancourt in Cuba, you're just going to see, in fact, Victor's even less, if you know him, he's less formal. You know, like sometimes he'll just come in jeans and it'll be okay. And maybe a little African dress like that. But Lázaro Cuesta, for example, will dress really nicely in white or something like that. How about Cuban Guayabera? The ceremonial hat. Or this is another common style, the estilo panadero, the baker style. So you'll see the babalaos dressed like that, and you might see them talking in a particular meeting when they do their letras de año, which is the odu for the year, when they describe what's going to happen in a particular country. They will make a press conference. Like we see this in Panama, we see this in Venezuela, we see this in Cuba, we see this now in Miami, because I know that Ifacola, an organization there that's associated with the Templo de Babaloaye, the Church of Babaloaye with Ernesto Pichardo. They are doing a letter now in Miami, in Puerto Rico. I, funny enough, had the good fortune. It's never going to happen to me again. I had the good fortune to divine the letter from Puerto Rico about 2 years ago. The only reason I'm not ever going to do it again is because the tradition is whoever's the youngest Babalao in the room is the one that's going to divine it. And the idea behind it is that there cannot be corrupted. A young Babalao still in the secret nature. He's just going to do his job. He's just going to divine and then say, you're the elder, speak. I don't know what I wrote a sign here, what does it say? And that's supposed to be the letter for the country. So at the time, I had 2 years of IFA. And I think 4 or 5 or 6, maybe 6 babalaos hadn't shown up yet. They had to start the proceedings, so they said, Rene, who's youngest? I'm 12, I'm 20. You know, Rene, you're 2, you're the youngest, come. You're gonna do it. And I wasn't prepared. I had just come to Puerto Rico to do a vacation trip. And I just happened to be there. I remember to the day, I was just looking at the cell phone, checking some information. I said, come on, you have to come do it. And then when they threw OB, the divination at the door, Ifa said, this is the Babala who's gonna do it. And funny enough, this is not coincidence. The sign that was divine for Puerto Rico was my own sign. OB. And the sign that came as the first witness for that was my mano Yoruba. So it's not coincidence. It was my 2 signs, very strongly associated. Orumila was essentially saying, hey, good morning, I'm looking at you. So I took it very seriously, not only for the country, but you can bet your butt that I did my own ebo for myself. Because when you divine your own sign for a country, it's a lot of astral energy that's coming down to that tablet and it affects you as a Babalao. So Nigerian Babalao, they can have dresses like this. They're very colorful. They're actually very beautiful. Very colorful, green, yellows, reds, etc. Sometimes their hats. One that people that usually wears hats very similar to this one. At Cuba Babalao, you're probably going to see them like this, on the nicer split, like pants like this and a guayabera with a hat like that here, or even worse, a regular shirt, jeans and t-shirt, and just a hat. Or sometimes nothing. There's a secular division, and it's changed. Some of the old school people will still show up to the ceremony dressed por lo menos una guayabera. Revere working power. Let's do something serious. Unless, of course, there's going to be something that's going to be very messy, and in that case, they'll come dressed a little bit more appropriate. Okay, why is Afro-Cuban Ifa different than Ifa lineages? Ifa comes from Nigeria. Let's clarify that and establish it forever. And I like to clarify that specifically because there's a lot of arrogance on the Cuban side. Not all, but there's a lot of arrogance on the Cuban side that, no, the good Ifa stayed here. They lost it over there. The Muslims and the Christians have taken over all of Nigeria land, which in most part, it's not totally untrue.
A lot of their information back.
Right? You got it. That's true. So they would claim that they lost everything. That they've abandoned the traditions. That Islam and Christianity has taken over Nigeria. That only 5 to 6%, maybe 10% tops, Nigerian. African traditional religion practitioners still exist, so therefore, somehow there's a curse on the African continent. That's why it's been poor all this time. They lost Ifa, and Ifa came to the real continent, Cuba. Yeah, fairy tale. This mentality. I make light of it, but this is a mentality I stumble upon theological arguments on forums all the time, from experts who should know better, and intellectually and academically, it should be challenged. But we establish first and foremost, this doesn't come from Mars. That's actually a refrain like, no viene de Marte. Ifa does not come from Mars. It comes from Nigeria. Let's be clear where this faith practice came from, and from Benin and from that area. But it contains elements of various lineage, a mixture of ceremonies from different lineages. Internal historical developments in Cuba led to the creation of substitutions, certain substitutions, given the different landscape and plans, and power battles between the Orisha and Ifa houses that led to the established norms and division of labor that I was talking before between Orishas and Babalaos that we see today. Babalaos and Orishas in Nigeria may or may not have the same prohibitions, depending on their lineage. Babalaos may divine with Dilobun. They can actually cast caracoles if they actually wish to do it. It's a smaller oracle that only has 16 to 17 signs, I believe 16 plus opera. In the Cuban side, they have more, but why would a Babalao, if they want to, divine with the caracoles when they have access to Ifa, which is an older and more expensive oracle? But it does happen. Babalaos do use caracoles de ella, and they do it in both with the Dilobun as well. They have a different one. It is often a point of contention between practitioners of the different lineages because it is often argued that Afro-Cuban Ifa is not true Ifa, and that ignores two realities. One of them, that the original founders of the faith practiced in Cuba were Nigerians themselves. They weren't Martians, they were Nigerians. They knew exactly what they were bringing. And more, with more research that's been done, we are finding the reasons or the ceremonies, the chants, the roots of many of the things that are done in Afro-Cuban Ifa in different lineages in Nigeria. There was a late Babalao, Leonel Game Ocheniwa, the revist did not mention him, and he one of the greater babalaos of this, in my opinion, this century. Of the living babalaos, in my opinion, the 2 or 3 that were some of the best and more elder than the Cuban side were Franco Peche, and Leone Gonzalez. He was an eminence in his knowledge. He actually knew Yoruba. He actually recited Yoruba and Eshefar. He was a Cuban man that lived in Mexico. And he was strongly, what's the word, motivated to rescue a lot of the traditions that were on the Nigerian side and to find the linkage between that and Cuba. And he was able to restore our ritual of the Ebo. He was able to restore the original prayers, some of the things that nobody had ever done. He found the original prayers for the Ebo, and he was able to find chants that explained and proved that a lot of the ceremonies that we do on the Cuban side are not inventions. And for a long time, nobody had been able to find. He had gone to Nigeria many times on investigation trips and brought conclusive evidence with photographic and video interviews with babalaos from over there, singing and showing the same movements and the same chants and the same mimicry that we do on the Cuban side. So he was able to prove that these were not inventions. So again, African Unified is Nigeria in its roots. But there is a regional difference even in Nigeria. That's one thing that people have to understand. From village to village or state to state, Ifa is practiced differently. So the question then becomes, if that's the case and that's acceptable in Nigeria, why then is Cuba's variant any less legit? Which is another lineage. Consider us another village. It's just that that village was moved over to the Americas through slavery. But you can find complete, relationships in the chants and mythologies in different regions with Cuban and Ifa. Very few things. I mean, I would have to admit as about all that there's 1 or 2 things that you see and they say, yeah, that's an invention. Or yeah, there's a mixture of Catholicism in this Odu here, this message here. Things that you can tell that this was an aggregation. But 90% or 95% of the practices are faithful to how they're done in Nigeria. They're completely authentic in the same way that theirs are authentic and ours are authentic. So, one of the important things that a lot of people ask is, what is the meaning of life from the perspective of Ifa, of theology Ifa? In other faiths, Abrahamic faiths mostly, the meaning of life is largely to do good and to worship the Abrahamic God, whether you call them Yahweh, whether you call them Allah. One is, at least in the Christian sense, one is born with sin, and only through the acceptance of Jesus Christ do you have your salvation. That's really, you can be good, you can do all the other things, but you are not complete until you accept Jesus. You must accept him as your Savior. Once you do that, we can wash away your sins and you can get to heaven. There's a theological explanation, salvation, and meaning of life. What's the meaning of life? To follow his gospel, follow his teachings, be good, accept him as your Savior. There's the meaning of life for a Christian. For Muslims, might be dutiful prayer every day. The idea of having to pray 5 times a day, the same thing, following the teachings of the Quran, etc. So there's a particular theology and focus in those religions. In Ifa, the meaning of life is to fulfill the